Hello, my dear friends. If you are in your 60s, 70s, or even your 80s, I want to speak to you directly today. This is not a lecture. It is not expert advice from a television show or a best-selling book. What I am about to share comes from my own life. Years of learning, personal mistakes, quiet mornings filled with reflection, and hard-earned wisdom. At this stage in life, we begin to see more clearly what truly matters. We also begin to understand that some things are better left unsaid. Not because we are hiding them, but because we are protecting what is sacred, our peace, our dignity, our relationships. Today, I want to share 9 personal lessons, 9 things I have learned that should not be shared carelessly, not with neighbors, not with distant relatives, not even with some close family members. As we age, we carry a lifetime of experience, and with that comes the responsibility to guard what we have learned, not out of fear, but out of love, for ourselves and for those we care about. Let us begin. 1. Your full financial details. I used to believe that being open about money was a sign of trust. In my younger years, I shared details about my income, savings, and even retirement plans with family and a few close friends. I thought it showed honesty, maybe even generosity. But life has a way of teaching us where the boundaries should be, especially when it comes to finances. You see, money changes how people treat you, sometimes in small ways, other times in ways that catch you completely off guard. A simple conversation about your savings can turn into quiet judgment, or worse, silent expectations. There was a time I shared too much with a younger relative, someone I loved and trusted. I thought they just wanted to learn, maybe ask for advice, but over time, I noticed they started hinting at financial help, sometimes joking about what I might leave behind. That shift in tone broke something in me, not because they asked, life is hard and I understand need, but because I saw how knowing too much changed the relationship. Now I keep my financial details between me and a trusted professional. My advisor knows what I have. I've made arrangements in case something happens, and there is one person in my family who knows where to find the necessary documents when the time comes. But that's it. I do not offer up numbers. I do not explain what I've planned for retirement or what I have left in my accounts, not because I am hiding something, but because I have learned to protect myself and to protect others from the burden of knowing more than they should. Money is a tool. It should serve you quietly. When you speak too freely about it, it starts to serve other people's expectations instead. So, take it from someone who's learned the hard way. Keep your numbers private and share only what is absolutely necessary when it is absolutely necessary. 2. Your will or inheritance plans in full detail. Talking about inheritance can feel responsible, even loving. You want your family to know your wishes. You want to prevent confusion or conflict when you're gone. I used to think the same way. I believed if I explained things clearly, if I walked my children or relatives through what I had planned, it would bring peace. But that's not always how it works. In fact, it can do the exact opposite. I remember a summer cookout in my backyard, just a casual afternoon with my children and their spouses. At some point, someone made a joke about who gets the house, and laughter followed. It seemed harmless at first. But later that evening, I noticed how quiet my daughter had become. My son avoided eye contact. Something had shifted. A simple comment had triggered comparison, maybe even resentment. The truth is, when people know in advance who gets what, it can open the door to expectations. Some feel hurt. Some feel overlooked. Others might begin to treat you differently, trying to stay close, not out of love, but out of hope. That is not the kind of energy I want around me in these later years of life. So, I made a decision. I worked with a good attorney. My will is clear. Everything is written down legally, updated when needed, and stored safely. I have named an executor. I've even written a personal letter explaining the why behind some of my decisions, not to justify, but to bring peace when I am no longer here to answer questions. But until that day comes, I keep the details to myself. I do not discuss percentages. I do not explain who gets which account or why. That is not a conversation for today. It is a plan for when I am no longer around. Let love guide the relationships while I'm living, and let the documents speak after I am gone. That is how I protect my peace, and hopefully theirs too. 3. Your deep regrets or painful past. Every one of us has things we wish we could go back and do differently. Choices we made, words we said or didn't say. Some of mine go all the way back to when I was a young man trying to figure out how to be a father, how to be a good man, how to balance work, family, and everything in between. And if I'm honest, I carry those regrets with me. Not in a way that weighs me down every day, but they're there, like old photographs in a drawer. I look at them sometimes, quietly, when the house is still. There was a time when I thought sharing those regrets would help, that maybe telling someone the whole truth about my mistakes would bring some kind of healing. I tried that. I opened up a few times to people I trusted, and while a few listened with kindness, others just didn't know what to do with what I shared. Some looked uncomfortable, others changed the subject, and in one case, it even became something that was brought back up in the wrong moment, like my pain had been used against me. That's when I realized, not everyone can carry the weight of your past, and not everyone should have to. Some parts of our story are for us alone. It does not mean we're hiding. It means we're respecting the journey we've taken and the complexity of what we've lived through. Now, when I feel the need to process something, I write it down. I've kept journals over the years, not every day, but often enough. And I've spoken to a counselor a few times, not because I was broken, but because I wanted to grow. Those moments helped me more than oversharing ever did. So if you carry pain, know this. You don't owe it to anyone to explain every scar. You're allowed to keep some parts sacred. What matters most is not what happened back then, but who you've become now. Let your regrets teach you, but let your silence protect you. 4. Intimate relationship details. There are things in life that are meant to be kept close to the heart. I have learned that the deeper and more meaningful a relationship is, the more sacred it becomes. And sacred things, well, they are not meant to be passed around in casual conversation. In my younger years, I was not always this careful. I grew up in a time when men were taught to downplay emotions, so we joked. We laughed off intimacy. We made small talk about big things because we did not know how to hold those parts of our lives with reverence. I remember sitting around with a few old friends, beer in hand, talking about our wives, our marriages, even the parts we probably had no business speaking about. At the time, it felt harmless, just men talking. But as I got older, I began to regret those moments. You see, when you share too much about your personal life, especially the emotional or intimate parts, you invite others into a space they were never meant to enter. And once they are in, it is hard to take that privacy back. What belongs between two people, between a husband and a wife, or a deeply committed partner, should be honored as something sacred. It is not meant for public display or storytelling, not even in jest. Since then, I have come to understand that preserving the privacy of your relationship is an act of love. It protects not just your partner's dignity, but your own as well. Even now, though my wife is no longer here, I carry that respect. I do not speak of the details of our private life. I do not turn our memories into anecdotes for the sake of conversation, because what we shared was ours and ours alone. And beyond romantic relationships, this applies to all close bonds, your connection with your children, your siblings, even your lifelong friends. There are things in those relationships that should remain behind closed doors, not to be hidden, but to be cherished. You do not owe anyone the full picture of your heart. Share what brings connection. Hold back what needs protection. With time, you learn that silence is not secrecy, it is wisdom. And respect for love in all its forms often sounds like quiet. 5. Your medical conditions. Now, let me say this right up front. Your health matters. If you are sick, struggling, or in need, speak up. Ask for help. Get the care you deserve. But I have also learned, After years of experience and many conversations, that sharing every detail of your medical situation with everyone around you is not always the wisest choice. There was a stretch of time in my mid-60s when I found myself going to the doctor more often than I cared to admit. A little back pain turned into tests. Those tests turned into referrals. The referrals turned into procedures. It felt like my entire world was shrinking down to appointment cards and waiting rooms. And naturally, I began talking about it with my friends, with neighbors, even with casual acquaintances at church or the grocery store. At first, people were kind. They asked questions, expressed concern, even shared stories of their own health scares. But over time, I noticed something. The tone changed. The conversations started to feel different, less about connection, more about concern, or, worse, pity. People began treating me like I was fragile, or worse, already halfway gone. I could see it in their eyes, the quiet worry, the shift in how they spoke to me. And it wore on me. I realized then that oversharing about our medical conditions, especially as we age, can shift how others see us. It can make people anxious. It can define us by what we are going through, rather than who we are. And sometimes, it just opens the door for gossip or speculation we never intended. So these days, I speak carefully about my health. My doctors know what they need to know. My children know the essentials. But the day-to-day aches and updates, I keep most of that to myself, unless someone truly needs to hear it. I try not to lead every conversation with what hurts or what test is coming up next, not because I am hiding, but because I choose not to let illness become the main story of my life. We are more than our diagnoses. We are more than our blood pressure, our joints, or our cholesterol numbers. We are still ourselves, living, breathing, thinking, loving human beings. And sometimes, the strongest thing you can say is simply, "I'm doing fine today," and leave it at that. 6. Where you keep your valuables. There was a man I knew once, a good man, honest, generous to a fault. We were talking one afternoon about keeping cash around the house, and he mentioned, almost offhandedly, that he had a few thousand tucked away in a metal box in his closet, behind some old sweaters. He said it casually, like he was telling me where he kept his extra batteries. A few months later, that same man's house was broken into. The only thing missing was that cash. Nothing else was touched. No drawers ransacked, no television gone. Just the box. Now, I'm not saying I know who did it. Maybe it was a coincidence. Maybe someone overheard. But that moment stayed with me. As we get older, we tend to rely on patterns, routines, habits. We keep certain documents in the same drawer for years. We write passwords on sticky notes we think no one will find. We hide spare keys in the same flower pot out front. It feels safe, familiar, but it is not always wise. Even the people you trust can change. Or sometimes they talk too freely without meaning harm. A friend tells their son tells someone else, and suddenly information about your valuables is floating around where it never should be. These days, I keep my sensitive documents, my will, my property papers, my identification, in a secure, locked file. I have a safe for a few irreplaceable items. My passwords are stored securely with someone I trust completely, and that trust was not given easily. I do not tell neighbors where I keep things. I do not give casual visitors access to certain rooms. I do not assume good intentions protect me from bad outcomes. And that's not paranoia. That's wisdom earned. You can be kind, you can be generous, and you can still be careful. In fact, you should be. Because the things you've worked your whole life to earn, to build, to protect, they deserve to be guarded, not just from strangers, but sometimes from carelessness. Protect your home, protect your plans, and above all, protect your peace of mind. 7. Other people's secrets. Over the years, I have become a keeper of many things: old tools, photographs, letters from decades past. But more than anything, I have become a keeper of stories. Real stories, hard stories, stories that people shared with me, not because they had to, but because they needed to. You see, something happens as we age. People begin to trust us more with their private truths. They come to us with quiet voices, with memories they have never told anyone else. Maybe it is because we have lived long enough to understand. Maybe it is because they know we will not judge. Or maybe it is because we simply know how to listen. And when someone chooses to share something private with you about their past, their mistakes, their struggles, it is a sacred thing. It does not matter if they say, "Please don't tell anyone." You should already know that, because their secret is not yours to carry out into the world. It is yours to hold and protect. I have heard confessions from friends who were once ashamed. I have listened to relatives talk about regrets they could not share with their own spouses. I have sat on porches and in hospital rooms, hearing stories I never expected to hear. And in all those moments, I learned something important. The kindest thing you can do is let those stories stay with you. It can be tempting, I know. You hear something shocking or emotional, and you want to talk about it, to process it, to share it with someone you trust. But the moment that story leaves your lips, it no longer belongs to just the person who lived it. It becomes part of gossip even if it's dressed up as concern. And the truth is, people remember how you handled their vulnerability. If they trusted you once and you betrayed that, even slightly, they will never trust you again. Not fully. And your name, your reputation, becomes a little less sturdy. So, I have made it a rule. If someone tells me something personal, something private, something they felt safe enough to say, I keep it. I do not repeat it, not even to my children, not even to my closest friend, not unless I am asked directly and clearly to share. That silence, that respect, it matters. Because in this life, we do not just build trust by being honest, we build it by being quiet when it counts. 8. Your loneliness or sadness with the wrong people. Let me be honest with you. There are quiet moments in my life that feel heavier than others. Sometimes it's the silence in the late evening. Sometimes it's walking into a room where no one waits for me. Other times, it's the sound of an old song playing on the radio that takes me back to a version of myself I barely recognize anymore. Loneliness, at this stage in life, is not always about being alone. It's about not being understood. You can be surrounded by people, your children, your grandchildren, even a community, and still feel invisible. You can smile through a dinner, laugh at a family gathering, and still carry a quiet ache inside. There was a time when I used to share that feeling openly. I thought being honest about my sadness would bring people closer. And sometimes it did, but more often than not, I found that people did not know what to do with it. Some brushed it off, saying things like, "You've got so much to be grateful for," or "You're lucky you've lived this long." Others changed the subject, uncomfortable with the weight of emotion. Worse yet, a few people seemed to look at me differently after, like I had become a burden, like my loneliness made them feel guilty. So I learned, not every person is the right person to share your sadness with. There are those who can hold space for you, who will sit with you in silence and not try to fix it. And then there are those who will minimize it, dismiss it, or make it about themselves. These days, I choose carefully. I speak honestly with a few trusted people, friends who have also known loss, time, and the long shadows of life. People who understand that sometimes the best response is simply to say, "I hear you," and let it be. I have found comfort in talking with a therapist, too. Not because I'm broken, but because I deserve to be heard without judgment. Your sadness is not a weakness. It is a reflection of how deeply you've lived, how much you've loved, and how much you still long for connection. But be wise in where you place it. Like any precious thing, it deserves safe hands. 9. Your fears about aging or death. There are things I think about now that I never used to. Simple things, like whether I will always be able to drive myself to the store, or if someday I'll need someone to help me tie my shoes. And then there are deeper fears, the kind I do not say out loud too often. Fears about becoming dependent. Fears about losing my memory. Fears about dying alone, or worse, being forgotten. These thoughts do not consume me, but they visit me. They come in the middle of the night, or when I look in the mirror and barely recognize the man staring back. They come when I hear of someone my age passing away, And I wonder quietly, when will it be my turn? Now, I want to make something clear. There is no shame in these fears. They are human. They are real. But not everyone deserves to hear them. Over time, I have learned that speaking openly about death, especially with people who are not ready to listen, often leads to awkward silence or shallow responses. You'll be fine, they say. Don't talk like that, they whisper. Or they change the subject, afraid that your fear might somehow bring them closer to their own. But these fears deserve more than silence or dismissal. They deserve to be met with empathy, with presence, with respect. So I have learned to speak about them only with those who can sit in the truth of it with me, those who will not rush to fix it, but will simply say, I understand, or you're not alone. Sometimes that person is a friend. Sometimes it's a chaplain. Sometimes it's just the page of my journal, or a quiet walk with no one but God. Aging is not just about the body. It's about the soul preparing for whatever comes next. And if you carry fears, do not bury them, but also do not hand them to people who are not ready to hold them. Speak to those who honor what you feel. And remember, courage is not the absence of fear. It is the choice to face it gently with wisdom and grace. So now, my friend, you've heard the 9 things I've learned to keep close as I've grown older. These are not rules written in stone. They're reflections, lessons shaped by quiet mornings, long conversations, and the kind of wisdom you only earn by living a full life. You and I, we've both seen how quickly trust can be broken, how easily relationships can shift, and how important it is to protect our peace in this season of life. We are not the same people we were in our 30s or 40s, and thank God for that. We have grown, softened, strengthened. And now we understand that part of maturity is knowing what to share, when to share it, and most of all, who deserves to hear the deeper parts of us. It's not about building walls. It's about choosing our boundaries with care. It's about honoring our own stories, our privacy, and the dignity we've earned over the years. If any of this spoke to you, then I hope you feel less alone today. I hope you feel stronger in your right to keep certain things just for yourself. And if you've got a bit of wisdom you've picked up along the way, something life taught you that no book ever could, I'd be honored if you shared it in the comments, because even now we're still learning from one another. And our voices still matter. Take care of yourself. Take care of your heart. And remember, what you choose to hold quietly can sometimes speak louder than anything you say.